All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what time zone you guys are in. As stated before, we are going to be looking at different Teams devices and figuring out how to choose which one you want to use in your environment. So for the agenda for today, we're going to start with a brief introduction, followed by covering our use cases in our environment, deciding how, after kind of learning about these devices, figuring out how we decide based on learning about the different features of the different device categories, and then kind of wrapping up with any questions that you guys do have regarding your environment. So starting off with a brief introduction, I am from Barberton, Ohio, and I am a Unified Communications Engineer at T2M Works. That was a recent kind of promotion from our cloud operations side back in February. So kind of a new and exciting role, and learning a lot of new things and having some new great experiences. I am a graduate of the University of Akron, and I have a bachelor's in computer information systems. I do have a small subset of certifications. I currently work on my MS 700. IT in general has been a lifelong passion and hobby for myself. Since I've been 4 years old, I built my first computer. 5 years old, I wanted a server rack. 7 years old, built my first Active Directory domain, and it just kind of everything went from there. Some of the hobbies that I have involve tinkering, building electronics, skiing, four-wheeling, and then a new one that's not on there is actually music production. So that's kind of a new thing that I've been kind of venturing into to kind of widen the things that I do on a day-to-day basis. So jumping into the content for today, we're going to go ahead and begin with defining our use cases. So this is by far to me personally, one of the most important steps when you're looking at your environment as a whole. And you really need to get a deep understanding of what your users in your environment are looking to do with their devices, but also within your organization. So this doesn't even just apply to devices. This is more or less applying to what solution you're working on for their environment. Kind of a great way to kind of look at different things is, looking at information workers versus knowledge-based workers, or like call center users versus your administrative users. The needs of each group or different department within the organization are going to vary, and that's going to help you kind of determine what device you need in your deployment. So a great way to kind of look at this is by listing out the needs individually of what those users are using on a day-to-day basis, to better decide what do we actually need to provide for them. And really, once you have those needs determined, you can then proceed to look at the different device categories and device types and then make your decisions based on that. Another big one that I like to point out is that you want to look at your current coexistence model. So for anybody that's Teams only, great, devices work for you. But if you're an organization today that's utilizing Skype for Business Server, or even potentially Skype for Business Online, if you are, just know you have a couple more months left on that. But if you're utilizing Skype for Business Server, you may want to, if you're looking at buying new devices, you may want to look at, if you're looking at Teams phones primarily, you may want to look at an older model of phone that supports both Skype for Business mode and Teams only mode, where they have like kind of the dual boot, dual firmware on those phones. So that's kind of like your audio code C450 HD, your Yealink T58A. Those are kind of dual firmware model phones. The other thing you could look at is if you look at like a Teams Rooms for Windows, and we'll kind of dive into what that is, and if you're not familiar with those, you do want to make sure that you or if you're looking for a conference room solution, that you can utilize those for both Skype and Teams. So you're kind of in a hybrid environment, or you're not, and you need to make sure that you're making the right decision based on those needs. So what do use cases look like when you're kind of looking at all your users? So kind of in this example, we have a difference between a knowledge worker and a remote/field worker. And we can kind of see all the things that they're looking to do. Now, why a lot of this doesn't apply directly to the devices that we're talking about, this is kind of useful for your environment so that you can determine kind of what they're looking for and what they're looking to use during their day-to-day jobs. So this is just kind of a quick little example, but it is something that you may want to kind of look further into. So starting with our different device categories, we're going to begin with our wonderful wired headsets. So this is by far one of the cheapest endpoint options available to your users. The cheapest one that I can find on Microsoft's website actually begins at $38. And this is flexible for organizations on tight budgets, but also ideal for a kind of a call center scenario or a scenario where there's a lot of radio frequency interference. So in a potentially congested environment where you have, just 50 users all within I'd say 800 square foot area, you're really cramming those people in there. If you're all utilizing wireless headsets, there's a strong chance that you might run just a little bit of radio frequency interference. So it may be more useful in your scenario to actually utilize a wired headset so you don't actually have any of those issues. Now, much kind of like all of our team certified devices, these will provide a rich and clear audio experience for all members. So whether you're the one speaking or you're listening in, once they're certified for Teams, they are going to be certified to have that rich and kind of clear call quality that you expect from your Teams environment. Now, in terms of manageability with your your wired headsets, is you're looking at third-party management software. So there really is not a way to manage this from inside of a Teams admin center or from a Microsoft dashboard. You're going to be relying pretty much on anything that Polycom or Jabra provide as part of their management software and whatever solutions that they require. So these are native Teams devices, but they do not have any management from Microsoft's end. Similar to the wired headsets, we also have our wireless headsets. So these are kind of flexible great for organizations that need flexible communications. So that if people have an office of their own, they want to be able to walk around freely in that office, you would for sure want to look at the wireless headsets. Now these do kind of vary in price range. They can be pretty cheap or they can be pretty expensive. I believe one of the cheaper wireless headsets is about $100, and these go all the way up to about $250, even more if you're looking at something like a Surface headphones for business, which I believe those are like $300. So the prices do vary depending on the needs of your organization, but you do get the flexibility of being able to roam around freely from your computer without being attached by any cables, and it's great for anybody that's working remote in your environment and so forth. Again, they are Teams certified. A lot of these have a Teams button on it, so if you press that button on the headset, it'll automatically launch the Teams client, and you'll be able to quickly get into your conversations, whether that's via chat and IM or via a phone call. The great kind of use case for this is also your mobile workers. So if you've got a lot of people working remote today, and with COVID, that's kind of a lot of people nowadays. Not as much of a narrowed use case like it was before. Or if you have kind of a low radio frequency area within a organization, these would be a great option for you to investigate. Again, these are third-party managed, so they are not natively managed within inside the Teams admin center. Kind of a different example of why you also may want to choose a wireless headset is that they do come in a lot of different form factors. So your traditional wired headset is only going to come in a mono or stereo configuration. It's going to be over the ear. When you look at a wireless scenario, there are many different options from various vendors available to you. So you have the Evolve 65T if you're wanting a traditional AirPod style headset. You also have the 65E, which kind of goes around your neck, and you have the little earbuds going. There's a lot of different designs available from different manufacturers, so make sure you do look at Microsoft's website, and that's aka.ms/Teams devices. And that you can kind of dive in further into the different form factors of headsets that are available, because some people may not like that big over-the-ear headset. They may like something earbuds, or they may like an on-the-ear headset, and kind of be able to provide those options that are available to those users is critical for so user adoption, that your users are happy with the organization. Another similar endpoint is kind of our speakerphones. So this is great for any type of mobile worker that's looking for a shared communications platform. So if you're a traveling employee and you're going to multiple customer sites, for example, and you want to have multiple people join into a Teams call quickly, you might want to look at one of these devices, as this allows you to quickly build a conference room in a room that may or may not have conferencing capabilities. The price range on these range from $80 to $250. And it is really great for your mobile workers. Not saying you can't use it for your own, but just yourself, because you can use this if you want a very good speakerphone type experience for your own let's just say your house, for example, and you're the only one talking. I'm sure a lot of you have joined into meetings where there's people utilizing their webcam microphone, kind of like I am right now, but that's besides the point. Do as I say, not as I do. But you join into these meetings and that somebody's got a weird echo. There's just a lot of things going on because they're not utilizing those team certified devices. If you're one of those employees that does not like wearing a headset, you can buy one of these and utilize it as kind of your speakerphone or even just your microphone for your Teams call. Again, like the wireless headsets, these are managed via third-party management software. And what's really cool is a lot of these different models, they have both a USB cable and a USB dongle. So as an example, a Jabra Speak 510 has the Jabra Link 360 USB adapter, but it also has USB cable. So in the event that the battery is dying, you can plug it in, or if you're using the wireless mode, you can move it around the room and there's not going to be any issues with your Teams meeting. So really cool little device. A lot of times people call them the pucks. But it is something to be aware of within your organization. So now kind of moving on to more Microsoft managed endpoints. The first one we're going to look at is our native Teams phones. So these are running the actual Teams mobile application. It's a modified version for the phones. And these allow for contacts, calendar management, one-touch meeting joins. You have a fully functional meeting experience. So you're actually, if you have a webcam on certain models, you can utilize those. And you also have voicemail transcriptions available to you right there on your desk. These are managed solely inside the Teams Admin Center. There are third-party management software from some vendors, such as Crestron, for example, that integrate, and they kind of have an underlying firmware that allows you to utilize their solution to manage the core hardware of these devices, but you can also utilize the Teams Admin Center to manage the Teams side of those devices. So kind of, a big thing to get familiar with here is that there's a lot of different solutions from various different vendors. And kind of going back to what we talked about before, if you are a Skype for Business shop today and you want to get new phones or as I move back on the slides, and you want to get new phones or new devices, you want to make sure that if you're wanting to utilize those devices today, that you're getting a dual firmware variant. So that's kind of like your Yealink T58A, your audio code C450HD. Those phones kind of have that ability to switch between a fully featured Skype mode and a fully featured Teams mode. But a lot of times with those devices, you are going to run into a little bit of performance issues because they are, this isn't really an official term, but more or less a Gen 1, one of the first Teams phones that were on the market. When you look at like a Crestron Flex phone today, these phones have a lot better processors in them, are going to be a lot more snappier while utilizing the Teams only mode. So it is kind of a decision you need to make as an organization to kind of say, okay, do we want to hold off on the deployment of these till we go to Teams, or do we want to go ahead and get something as an older device that has those dual firmware capabilities? So plenty of devices to choose from, depending on whether or not you need a small phone or a larger phone on your desk. Now, kind of secondary to this is kind of going back to the Skype for Business world is our legacy 3-pip devices. So these right now today are working with Teams via limited functionality. So these are actually in the back end registering to Skype for Business, but they're kind of doing an interop between that and the Teams service that allows these phones to still function. However, it is a limited functionality scenario. And right now, Microsoft has like quote unquote announced July 31st, 2023 as being the official day that they want to terminate this service for 3-pip interop. But they have said that, hey, we want to just kind of extend this, but they have not given a date. So the firm date is July 31st, 2023, but that date pretty much may or may not happen, but that's still a date that I still consider to be very important because it kind of is still an official date, rather than, hey, it may be 2024, maybe 2025. We don't know. Now, when 3-pip is end of life and that interop is done, certain phones for different manufacturers are going to be able to be used in their SIP phone interop mode. So this is a new mode that Microsoft's actually going to be working on launching here very soon. And this allows you to register some SIP endpoints directly into Microsoft Teams. So this will kind of be something that's coming here soon, and we'll kind of touch base a little bit more on that here in a few slides. Now, If you already have a Skype for Business deployment that's utilizing these phones, you can move to Teams. You're just going to have that limited functionality. But you don't have that device upgrade budget where you can't say, okay, we're going to replace 50,000 phones with brand new Teams phones, because that's going to get very pricey. Now, in terms of functional limitations of these phones, you're not going to have any voicemail or MWI notifications. This kind of went away with cloud voicemail. If you try to change your presence from these phones, you will not be able to do so. If you try to set like call forwarding on the phone, you won't be able to. And then also, you are able to join into Teams meetings, not via Better Together, but just be able to join into a Teams meetings, but you're only able to join in utilizing audio. So that is the only functionality that you are going to have if you try to join a Teams meeting from one of these phones. The other big thing is that your personal contacts list and speed dial list will not work on these phones either. Now, the phone itself has kind of its own built-in speed dial list, such as like an audio codes or like a little sidecar. You can still utilize that, but utilizing a native Skype for Business contacts list, that will not work. Now, if you were in Skype for Business online and your contacts, you migrated to Teams and you're utilizing these phones in 3-pip, the contacts list that you had in Skype for Business online at the time of migration to Teams will still be there available to you on the phone, but you cannot change it at all. So it's kind of something that's still there and left over, but you can still utilize that if you are utilizing that on your phone. Also, if you are looking to deploy Teams with local media optimization, that is not supported by any other device other than a native Teams phone and a full desktop PC client. So if you're trying to use that with the VVX, it will not work in kind of those scenarios. Now, if you do have VVXs or an audio codes phone, you want to get native Teams phones, there are partner trade-up programs available to you from Polycom, Audio Codes, and Yealink that allow you to get those newer devices at a discounted rate by trading in your current phones. And if you are interested in that, make sure you reach out to your account representative, and they'll be able to kind of further get you guys interested in what options they have available for your organization. Similar to our native Teams phones is going to be our native Teams display. So this is kind of a new category from Microsoft. And like phones, it is really designed to be a standalone Teams device with companionship with your PC. So it can be either a standalone device, or it can be a companion to the Teams experience on your desktop, to where you can manage, chats, meetings, even files now from these Teams displays, so that you can go ahead and kind of have a secondary screen for Teams in your environment. There is a very similar UI in some aspects to that of a Teams phone. So if you actually go in the menu options, it is very similar to that of a Teams phone. But the big differentiator here that you're going to see is the home screen experience. So instead of just a standard gray screen with a 2x2 quadrant for your options, you now have this large, colorful and interactive and customizable home screen experience. With these, a big difference is that they have built-in cameras and motion sensors. So kind of a cool thing is that you can join to a meeting and turn your webcam on right from a small device. So kind of a great scenario that I've actually personally thought of for this is that you have your C-level executives that they usually have a larger office with a small side table that they like to sit at and meet with people. You can put one of these on that table, and it's just an all-in-one little compact device that they can join into their Teams meetings and kind of bring one or two people in potentially to those meetings. These also support Cortana, so you can say, hey Cortana, what's the weather, or hey Cortana, can you schedule a meeting with somebody at XYZ time, and she'll be able to provide that kind of voice and non-touch experience on these devices. So really cool device category to look at, but one that's kind of an iffy category for me personally, where you kind of see the difference between a Teams phone and Teams display, and you're like, okay, why not just add a headset to the Teams display and get these newer features? It's kind of some of those things that are still out there, but it is something that you do want to be aware of in kind of your environment. So we're going to start looking at different conference room solutions. So we kind of looked at our endpoints for our users, but now let's kind of look at what we have available to you in the conference room. So our first main category is a Microsoft Teams rooms for Windows. So this is kind of the big conference room solution. It is kind of the creme de la creme. Teams rooms for Android is really there too, but the Teams rooms for Windows is kind of the top of the line. And then this is really designed for your medium to large size conference rooms and supports 1 to 2 displays. This also has a separate meeting room control panel, so you'll have your two displays mounted, one or two displays mounted in the front of the room, but you also have a console that you have back farther away from the display that allows you to manage the meeting, do one-touch meeting, join, dial a phone number, kind of do a lot of different things, even control the room with some vendors if you have like lighting or shades or different things of that matter. The really cool thing with this is that you are able to join Zoom and WebEx meetings from these conference rooms. So I'm not sure if anybody here has ever tried to have one conference room solution, but as soon as you start working with your external partners, especially if you're looking at C-level executives, a lot of times those other organizations are utilizing WebEx or Zoom, and trying to bring that into your existing conference room is a really big pain in the butt. We're usually doing HDMI ingest or plugging a laptop into a TV, and it's really not that great of an experience. So kind of bringing this to the Teams Rooms for Windows ecosystem is kind of a big differentiator from different competitors. Now, this is not a native experience. It is utilizing a web client, but it is still a lot better than trying just to plug a laptop in at the end of the table and saying, here's your conference room solution. Another big cool thing with the Teams Run for Windows is that it allows ink capture from dry erase boards. So if you have a dry erase board in your environment, you can easily put a Logitech Brio or another certified camera hanging in front of that and be able to write and dry erase and then save that into Microsoft Whiteboard, kind of all part of that same conferencing solution. So a really cool device there. The next category is your Microsoft Teams Rooms for Android. So if you guys have been inside the Teams Admin Center, this is formerly called our collaboration bars. So these are really designed for our small to medium-sized rooms, and they today only support one display. Now, like these, they can either be used in two different configurations where you have a single display in the front of the room that's touch enabled, and that single display is you're able to touch that and say, I want to join this meeting, and click on join. That is option one. Option number two is to have a single display in a room that's not touch enabled, and then have a separate device that allows you to have your media control. So kind of similar to your Teams Rooms for Windows, where you have that external media control panel. You can easily put one of those in there, but on a much smaller level. The kind of other category that we're going to quickly touch on is the Surface Hub. And now the Surface Hub can either be your main or a supplementary device to your meeting room experience. So what I mean by that is that you can put in the center of your room and say, this is our meeting room device, pop a camera on it, and this is what we're going to utilize for meetings. And you have a fully interactive 85-inch or 55-inch, I think 50-inch and 85-inch, if I'm mistaken, actually, display that's right in the front of your room. But the supplementary part that comes with this is that you can have a Teams Rooms for Windows experience and have a Surface Hub to the right, like maybe in one of the 50 inches on an easel format, and be able to join into those same Teams meetings from that device and be able to do all your whiteboard work on that Surface Hub, bring it into the same meeting that's displayed in the front of the room, and also to all the participants of that Teams meeting. So really cool kind of integration between the different device categories. Now, one that's not really used for conferencing, but it is used for displays, is kind of our Teams panels. And these are kind of a standalone scheduling panel that could be mounted outside of a room so that people can walk by your room and actually see, hey, is this room available? Or, hey, can I schedule a meeting, or what times are available? And we'll kind of touch base on that here shortly. So starting off with our Teams Rooms for Windows, kind of what it looks like is that you have those two displays and you have the center console there. This is kind of my old deployment that I had here at my house. And it also supports customization and custom branding. So if you have a large organization that's looking to have your company brand in all your conference rooms, you can customize that background and the theme that's deployed to these devices. Another really cool feature about these is that they have HDMI ingest. So you could take a laptop that's maybe not joining to that Teams meeting, or if you wanted to, an Xbox or anything that supports HDMI, and bring that right into a Teams meeting because it has that HDMI ingest capability. Again, they have the whiteboard capability and also that meeting join via Zoom and WebEx. Now, this also supports a scenario where you can have multiple external cameras. So if you're in a very large boardroom, for example, and you have multiple cameras, you can easily switch between those on a Teams Rooms for Windows experience. Now, they do support 1080p video. Now, I'm not sure if Microsoft has brought back 1080p video to Teams. Back when COVID hit last year, they did lower all video resolutions to 720p. So I'm not sure if that's operating at 1080p yet, but it does support a full 1080p video experience. And really with these devices, you are managing these via Windows. So it's a very familiar experience to that of all your other end users in your environment. So you're not kind of doing custom things for these devices to actually go ahead and manage them. On a different scenario, kind of not just my small little lab environment, what do these look like? This is a example boardroom that Microsoft provided that kind of shows a large boardroom with 2 displays in the center that has microphones from I assume Polycom in this scenario that allow them to kind of capture everybody in the room no matter where they're sitting, what they're saying, and then kind of presenting that out to everybody in a Teams meeting environment. So looking at our Teams rooms for Android, these are going to be a much cheaper cost compared to that of a Teams rooms for Windows environment. These are very quick to deploy as a single bar with a camera and has your speaker built in. That could be mounted either below or above a display. So this could be a 32-inch display. This could be a 55-inch display, just depending on what you have in these small to mid-size rooms. Also, these are really cool for working from home scenarios. Maybe you have some type of executive that wants a really native and really nice experience, but doesn't want a tiny screen like a Teams display. This would be a great solution, so they can kind of have a dedicated device just for Teams meetings. One limitation of Teams rooms for Android is that they are limited to 720p video. So even without any Microsoft limitations on the back end side, you're still going to run into that scenario with 720p video only. Now, the Surface Hub, I at least just wanted to kind of quickly touch base on it because we could go into a lot on the Surface Hub, but I at least wanted just to familiarize you with the different form factors available to you in case you were not aware of them already. So they do have the 84 and the 50-inch model, and they are both able to be portable or mounted to a wall. And they support different camera configurations and different things for your environment. And the big thing with the Surface Hub, that's the Surface Hub 2S that's on a small easel, is that it does have a battery on that. So if you want to wheel that to a room or some area like a warehouse that may or may not have power, you can have that out there and connect via Wi-Fi to be able to actually go ahead and get into a Teams meeting in case you're working with different people or having some type of event that you don't have that direct connectivity. So there's really cool scenarios available to you on the Surface Hub, and I advise you to check it out to see if it is a solution for your environment. It is the most expensive solution. I believe the 50-inch panel is starting around 10 grand. The 80-inch model, that you're upwards of 20 grand at that point. So it is a lot more expensive compared to a Teams rooms or Teams rooms for Windows or Android solution. We're looking at that $1,000 to $3,000 to $4,000 range. So the big difference between the two, but it is something that you may want to consider maybe for an executive boardroom or something of that matter. So one of our other device types is our Teams panels, and these are a very new device category that I've actually kind of grown to love. And it allows you to locate kind of valid conference rooms in your environment. So, have you guys ever, if you're in an office scenario and you've gone walking around an office, hey, is this a conference room or is this just somebody's office? Or because some scenarios, people may keep their office empty and they may be working from home. And so by putting these outside your conference rooms, you can quickly identify that, hey, this is a conference room. But what's really cool about it is that a lot of the devices, so in this case, we have our Crestron panel here, they can have a presence indicator on the back of those that will show whether or not somebody's in that meeting room or not. So green for, available, red or purple for in a meeting. Now, what's cool is that you can reserve rooms from either a mobile app or right from the meeting room panel. But I put an asterisk there for a reason, and that is that if the conference room is currently in use, so if you look at the top scenario, this kind of shows you a conference room that is in use, there is nothing you can do to schedule a meeting even at an available time in the future at the current stage of where it is in the product. So if you have these Teams panels and that conference room is in use, you cannot schedule a meeting at a later time or anything until that calendar for that meeting room actually shows as available. If it is showing as available, you'll see that green reserve button, and you'll be able to schedule that meeting and say, I want to reserve this room for the next 30 minutes or something along those lines. These are kind of some of the kind of early days of these Teams panels that I hope Microsoft addresses, but I at least want to make you aware of those so that you're not going to buy a couple of these and spend a lot of money getting them and run in a scenario where, okay, well, they're in a meeting right now, but why can't I reserve it at a later time? I want to at least just make you aware of that. There are also a few little bugs right now with different things between time zones. With time on the different will be different from the time zones on the right. So there's a lot of things that are kind of still there in terms of the newness of this product, but I'm sure that Microsoft will be working to resolve as kind of time goes on. Kind of similar, we had similar issues with Teams phones at the beginning. So kind of as we bring these new device categories to market, it is something that we do want to be aware of. Now, the other really cool thing is that they come in different sizes. So example from Crestron is they come in either a 7 or 10-inch model. So depending on the size of the room or in the cost of these panels, you don't want to be buying 10-inch panels even for your 2-seater huddle rooms or any of those matters. So you could buy the cheaper 7-inch models that are available from Crestron. Now, Yealink, I believe, is coming to market as well with these. But right now, today, the company that is on the market is Crestron, and that is kind of at this current time. Now, one of the last categories is the Teams certified monitors. And this is kind of one of those ones where I scratch my head a little bit. But these are really designed for workers having a meeting at their desk and looking outside of having a certified like speaker puck. If you want to use like a speaker type scenario, you could look at utilizing a Teams monitor, for example. And these have built-in cameras, microphones, speakers that give that clear experience that come from those certified Teams devices. So, with these scenarios, with a lot of people work from home, I personally, I'm not one for wearing a headset during the day. It just gets really annoying. And so this kind of could bring a use case to where you have those users, wanting to utilize their speakerphone environment without having to have an external hockey puck or some other Team certified device to be able to provide that clear and rich audio experience. Currently, there are 3 models on market with one coming here soon. So there's 2 from Dell and 1 on the market today, and then the other Dell. The small, actually the 3 Dells are on the market. The smaller Polycom is not on the market yet, but it is coming soon. And that's your Polycom P21. The big kind of setback, why I can't say everybody go buy these, is that it's going to come down to the cost. Dell's 24-inch full HD version, so this is 1080p. We're not even talking 1440p or 4K. That starts at $519. So it is pricey compared to a standard 24-inch monitor you can buy for $180 today. So there is a very large amount of money that's included with these, but also you may want to consider that it is including your camera, your microphone, your speaker. So it kind of does offset the cost, but it is on the higher side. If you're looking for a QHD model, you're looking at roughly $720. And then a 34-inch kind of curved monitor experience, you're looking at roughly $1,150. And then all these launched back in February, so those are available to you today. So there is a much higher price per monitor because you're really only going to be buying one of these in your per user, even if they have a multi-monitor setup. So there is a much higher cost, but it is something that may or may not meet the needs of your organization, depending on your use cases. So now that we've kind of looked at all of our devices that we have available to us, we need to say, how do we decide what we want to use? So you're really going to go back to our original use cases that we found from the beginning during when we define those use cases and see what's going to meet the needs of organization. What are our users using now that we know more about these different devices and device categories? And once we kind of determine what kind of devices we want to utilize, we can reach out to different vendors. So whether or not you're using CDW or you're utilizing even directly like somebody like Unified Communications or different vendors that are out there, you can request trial or demo equipment from them that you could use in your environment for 60 days to kind of help better examine if these are going to meet the needs of your organization. Now, what I wanted to kind of push is that you want to try to select a device, one device at least from each category, so that you kind of have a wide portfolio of devices. But one thing that I personally recommend is that you want to try to stay within as few vendors as possible. I'm not saying go with everything with one vendor, but when you have just like say 1 or 2 vendors in your environment, you're going to be looking at ease of warranty management, ease of software management. So like if you're utilizing all Jabra headsets, you don't need to worry about putting different software on the machines if you're just utilizing Jabra headsets in your environment. So kind of big thing to kind of take into account from not even just a manageability side, but also from kind of the end user perspective. Now, one of the greatest things with kind of not so much with COVID, but kind of as we get back into the office type scenarios, as kind of the vaccines and everything roll out more, is kind of holding a device roadshow. So this was actually one of my personal favorite things, kind of before I got in the UC industry, where I got to have hands-on experience with these devices at a company-wide meeting and be able to see, okay, am I going to want a desk phone? Am I going to want a headset? Am I going to want, a hockey puck? Kind of what is available to me and what can I utilize in my environment? That is beneficial to your end users rather than saying, okay, guys, we're getting rid of all phones, we're going headsets. Now, while we love to say that, less phones the better, and less headaches for IT, there are always going to be those scenarios where we have those users that want to have that physical handset or that physical device in their environment. So kind of a great overview of kind of how you make those decisions in your environment. So we have roughly 5 minutes left in our presentation today. So I am going to leave that open to questions. If after this meeting you run into any questions and you want to, ask those away, my Twitter, my LinkedIn, and my personal blog are available there to you. My blog is ucit.blog. Feel free to reach out to me on any 3 of those platforms, and I'll be more than happy to assist you today. So while we're kind of going through that, do we have any questions? So I see Mark Shear said, in a hot desking scenario, do you think USB Teams phones are the way to go? So it depends. So if you're utilizing, those users are wanting to pick up a handset every single phone call that they have, you may want to go ahead and look at utilizing one of those in your environment. I'm not sure where that slide went away. You may want to look at utilizing one of those in your environment, but kind of in a long-term scenario, if you have 100 users that are utilizing a handset, it may or may not be the best thing. They maybe want to look at utilizing a headset instead of a handset.